authentication, we created two users, Naresh Shetty admin with having admin role, Naresh Shetty guest having guest role. And we provision admin role can access all tickets, guest role can access individual ticket. So this is what so far we did it. So the problem we observed in this approach is if you want to change dynamically a particular role, a user to a role, I cannot change it. That's the first problem. And the second problem is if you have large number of users, we cannot create that many volume of users into the memory. It will eat the lot of memory. So in-memory authentication specially used for a small application with 10 to 15 screens and 2 to 3 users, 4 to 5 rules, a small application. That is where we can use in-memory authentication. Mostly users are fixed, roles are fixed, application is fixed. So in those cases, we'll use in-memory authentication. Now, if I want to achieve dynamic authentication as well as dynamic authorization, we need to focus on typically on database authentication, where we are going to create the users outside of springboot, outside of springboot, maybe in database or in LDAP or whatever it may be, outside of springboot we are going to create. So in doing so, we need to learn the new concepts related to the same scenario. So as part of the tabular format, authentication object as well as authorization object, both to be created by the springboot only. Both authentication object as well as authorization object to be created by the springboot only. Developer responsibility is only to populate the values. So in this context, by default, user details object is by default created by the framework. User details object is typically created by the framework only. Okay. Just we need to make sure that we need to populate the values to that object. So user details is object which is managed by the user details service. That is the first point. And if you want to achieve authorization, in the previous example, we changed the URL like admin role, we changed the URL. At URL level, we achieved the security. Okay. But if you want to achieve at method level, like a method, I want to write the code is this method is typically used for this particular role. If I want to achieve method level security, then I'll go with enable global method security. And as part of the previous example, when we save password, when we give the password in a plain text format, then framework is not allowing the password in a plain text format. We used a noob keyword. The noob keyword is going to internally encrypt the user ID, internally encrypt the password. So if I have my own crypto system, any of the crypto system I have, then I can simply use password encoder and password decoder are the predefined interfaces which are given by the Spring Boot, where I can club with my crypto system to that. So by default, when we are doing this, one prerequisite or one common rule we need to remember, because we need to follow the rules given by the framework only. So the common rule is we have authentication manager builder. In authentication manager builder, we have user details object. To that user details object, we are setting the roles. While setting the roles to the framework, we need to add our role should be role underscore plus role name. Our role name should be what? Role underscore plus role name. That is what we need to add it. For example, if our roles are admin role, guest role, managerial role, as well as security role, then what we need to set is we need to set to the user details object role underscore admin, role underscore manager, role underscore security, role underscore something like that. Okay. So to which property? There is a simple granted authority property to the user details object. To that particular property, we are going to set it. So this is one of the predefined conditions. So what I am going to showcase is I am writing a controller. That controller will have three methods. When we are accessing the first method, it should not ask me any authentication, as well as it should not ask me any authorization. It should not ask me any authentication, as well as it should not ask me any authorization. Simply I can access the method. When you access the second method, okay, when you access the second method, it only admin role only can access. A login page should come and logged in user is admin role, then only he can access. And third method, only guest role can access. So this is only one controller. I'm going to write three methods and I'm going to have the scenario. So when we have a flow diagram, what I mean to say that on the left hand side, when we are having rest slash hello slash secure, okay, so no security at all, as well as rest slash allowed slash secure, I mean endpoint 2, we are going to have admin role, endpoint 3, we are going to have guest role. By default, we are going to write web security configure adapter, which is having a configure global method. In that authentication manager builder, we are going to have user details service, which is having all our roles and user ID will update to that. And we are going to have configure method, which is going to have star secured. Any kind of secured keyword is there, we want to protect that, because in the first URL, I mean in the first endpoint, it should not ask for authentication, as well as it should not authorization, right? I want to protect it. And by default, the main prerequisite here is assuming that if I have 1,000 users in my database, I cannot give all 1,000 users to the database. I cannot give the 1,000 users to the database. Okay. So what is the architecture is, by default, whenever a login page is formed, okay, whenever a login page is formed internally, user ID and password, it will populate it, right? So whenever I type the user ID and whenever I type the password and whenever I click on submit button, right? At that time, framework is going to call you load user by username method. Framework is going to call you load user by username method with that username. Okay. Whatever the username typed on the screen, with that username, framework is going to call you load user by username, where we need to override that method. There's an important interview question. Okay. So user details service dot load user by username method, where we need to override that, and we need to get the data with that username. We'll get the data from our database, because Spring Boot not having where is the data, we don't know, right? So we are going to get the data from our database and we'll give the data to the user details object. Okay. We are going to get the data to the user details object, and then rest of the things will be taking care of that. And global method security with a pre-authorization, which is going to have that. So this is so far what I discussed in my previous class. Okay. Maybe I'll go deep dive onto the next one, onto the next flow diagram. But before I proceed further, as of now, anyone, any questions so far? As of now, anyone has any questions, guys, so far?
Sir, regarding the controller, sir,
Sure.
you mentioned like 3 API methods, right?
Correct, sir. A controller which is having 3 methods.
So
Okay.
we should maintain for 3, or can we customize like no security
Anything.
can we avoid?
Yeah, I mean, just like I gave 3.
Okay, okay.
1, no authentication, no authorization. Okay. Second, only admin role. Third, only guest role. All combinations will be covered, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, if we have any other users, we can have other control.
Correct.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, by default, no. Point is, by default, user will be across the system, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I create a user. What I'll do here, user will be available, but authorization will not be there. Understand?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So guys, this is a very important point. User detail service dot load user by username. Sir, you may get only 10% of knowledge through theory. Through theory, you will understand user details object, simple granted authority property, role underscore plus role name, and load user by username. These are the words only you will understand. When we write the code, you will understand more and more and more. Understand? So the architecture is, if I have 1000 users in my table, all 1000 will not be loaded into the memory. Whenever we have a login page, for example, Vijay 1 to Vijay 1000 users are there. Okay. All Vijays are not saved into the application. Okay. Assuming that when I have Vijay 1 is saved, when I enter Vijay 1 on the user ID page, then framework is going to load. It will call the load user by username method. Okay. And it is going to call that user data and will give the user one and all those data. So runtime, at runtime, it is going to give you the data. Load user by username. By default, framework is going to capture that. Okay. Yes.
So
Now
one thing like here we are calling a method like load user by username.
it's
So
not we are
the
calling.
you
Sorry, sir, please.
internally the framework is doing, right?
Correct.
We are
Correct.
overriding that method.
Exactly. Correct.
So we are getting the data on the basis of username. What about the password? Are we verifying the password as well in this case?
Because I already mentioned that we are going to store the data in our database. Am I right? And who is going to verify the password? I mentioned, right? In the tabular format, user ID password verification done by the framework only. Means whatever the password I typed on the login screen, whatever the password is saved in the database, are both same or not? Who will verify that? Framework will verify that. Redirection of the login page done by the framework. If it is authentication is success, redirecting to the main URL. If authentication is failed, again redirecting to the login page. All these things will be done by the framework. What is our responsibility? Just we need to populate the data. Hey, Vijay is my username. Vijay is my password. My role is admin role. That's it. Only we'll populate the data to the framework. That's it. We don't do any other things. Sir, is that clear, sir?
Yes, I'm clear.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other question, guys? As of now? Okay. Now, whenever we run Spring Boot application, by default, Bootstrap class will be loaded, and default filter chain web security configure adapter will be loaded, which is going to have authentication manager builder, HTTP security object, user details service, configure global method, and our user details object is having role underscore review. Something assuming that I wrote this entire code and I run my application. Whenever I access the endpoint or whenever I access a particular URL, first time no details are available in memory, right? So it is going to give sign in page. First time memory details are not available. It is going to give a login page. And if user details are available in memory, first time I'm going to the page where user details are not available in the memory, right? So that it is going to move for web security configure adapter. It is navigating to, it will call load user by username method with username, and framework will check is authentication is success, authorization is also success. Then it will redirect the code to the login page. It will be redirecting the code to the login page. Otherwise, it is going to redirect to the code to the failure page. It's redirect to the code to the login page, or it will redirect. Okay. For example, first time I logged in and it matched, and I was able to go to the controller. And second time, user details are already in the memory, right? Then it will not call load user by username. Load user by username will be called only once. Understand, guys? Load user by username method will be called only once for the first time. Once my user ID, once my password, once my data is set in that session, and every time it will not ask for authentication. Just now we saw that, right? Once JSession ID is saved, and it will not verify every time, right? So that is the flow diagram which this is giving. So what we are able to understand from this flow diagram, by default, load user by username call will be triggered only once at session level. Per session, this call will be there only once. That is a point where we are to go into grab from here. So makes sense, guys, everyone?
So here you are saying that once the user is verified, it will store into the memory. So
Correct.
memory in the sense it's an browser memory or application memory. You're saying?
Application memory, Tomcat memory.
Okay, Tomcat memory. Got it.
Okay. Yeah. Any other?
Sir, if we hit a URL, it is also possible that no authentication and authorization required as in the first case. Then how it will handle? It will not create sign-in page, na?
Yeah, by default, for example, when this is clicked, if it is security is blocking this, then only this flow. For example, security is not blocking, directly it will go to the controller, right?
Okay, got it.
Because I shown you right here. Any request bootstrap, security jars are available, it will available. For example, security jars are not telling you to do that, then it is not going to do that, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right. Any other question? So typically everyone is clear, right, as of now?
So it will fetch the data from database and it will store the user details and password in the Tomcat memory. It means application memory.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other? Any other questions, guys? Anyone as of now?
Sir, one real question, that is that user detail service object, right? So that you actually mentioned we're going to be populate the data with user password and
Correct.
all the role details, etc.
Yes.
Right. So that details we going to be fetch the details from the database and populate the object, or
Correct. We are going to
that's
fetch the data from
something,
database. No. Because we only know, right? We in which table we are saving, in which way we are populating everything. We only know, right?
Yeah. So when we even to fetch it, right? I think we'll fetch based on the
Correct.
username.
Based on the username. Correct. What is how username? Based on whatever the username is typed on the screen, That username.
That username. Okay.
Yes.
And automatically that connector will have that whatever the login form, whatever the user type, username and password, it will be that even those details also in the user details object, or that will be managed by the framework, that separate object.
Which one? I didn't understand actually.
When the user type username and password,
Mhm.
so and when he said login,
Mhm.
and those details of username and password, what he type will
Mhm.
be in the back end. It will be mapped to some object, right? Or
No,
it
no, no.
will
It
be
will
saved.
not mapped. It will not be mapped actually. It will just
Mhm.
take the text box value or whatever the HTTP header value, and it will keep that in. That's it. It will not keep any object actually.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Any other? As of no, anyone? Any other? Okay. So by default, I'm going to show you the code. Okay. So to type this code, it will take a little bit time, guys. I'll make sure that one by one line, I'll write the code. One by one line. Okay. I'll explain the code. So first of all, if you take model class, this is my user table. Okay. Because I'm going to have a table, right? Database, which is equal to user ID, email, password, name, last